and welcome back one more time to breaking down Better Call Saul. We're here, it's the end. I don't know what to say. I feel like I could sit here for 3 hours and talk about this final episode, and it's taken me a couple of weeks to get around to reviewing it because did I even really need to review it? I mean, you hopefully saw my live reaction to the final episode of Season 6 of Better Call Saul, Episode 13, Saul Gone. I posted it the day after the show aired, and it pretty much summed up a lot of what I loved about it and what I thought about the end of the show. But I have reviewed every episode of the second half of Season 6. Obviously, I did that big bulky review of the first half of Season 6, but I've done everything. I've reviewed everything, and this is the one last thing left to do to formally sit down and talk about the final episode of Better Call Saul, the final episode of the Breaking Bad journey. People call it the Breaking Bad universe, and I start to think, like, is it a universe? Like, can we just keep it as a, a solar system, maybe? I don't think this needs to be a cinematic universe, or a televisual universe. Just keep it as it is. I saw a tweet the other day that said, what's next for the Breaking Bad universe? And my response was, hopefully fucking nothing. Like, I hope they never go back to this. I hope they never do it again. Could I see them, and spoilers by the way, could I see them doing another spin-off that's about Kim Wexler? Absolutely. Do I think with the amount of love they have for that character and how great of an actress Ray Seahorn is that they want to do that? Absolutely. Is there room there for Kim to be working as a lawyer again and kind of diving deeper into her backstory and her past and her troubled relationship with her mother, and then having Jimmy there in prison to kind of advise her almost in like a Hannibal Lecter kind of way on her cases? Yes, that'd be an amazing show, but I don't think it should happen because I just think it ended so perfectly. And there's not enough things that end these days. It always has to be, churned into something else. Now, what's working for it is perhaps the fact that, Better Call Saul wasn't a ratings, machine at all, from what I can tell. And it was, I don't know if it's like mainly goodwill from AMC that kind of kept the show going, but regardless, I think if Vince Gilligan said, I want to do another Breaking Bad show, someone will pick it up. It would get done. But I hope they leave it. I mean, for me, I was thinking they could do a Kim Wexler show. They could do a Lalo movie, I think, like a 2-hour kind of Lalo kind of dealing with a cartel kind of. But then, how does it tie into the grander story beyond just a cool, extra bit of Lalo action? And I don't know if it would be cheap, maybe. Even if it would be fun, it wouldn't really add much to the grander story, which I think El Camino and Better Call Saul have added to the grander story of Breaking Bad. Another thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the episode is that, obviously this is a prequel show. I now view it really as a sequel show. I don't think this works as the beginning. First and foremost because when you see the actors in Better Call Saul and then we go into Breaking Bad, they suddenly get a lot younger. And I think if you start at Breaking Bad, then you work to Better Call Saul, Jonathan Banks looks pretty much the same age as he did in the end of Breaking Bad, so you don't notice it too much. Same with Giancarlo Esposito as Gus Fring. But by the time you get to the end of Better Call Saul, Jonathan Banks looks a lot older than he ever was in Breaking Bad, etc., etc. So I think that, and also you have the Gene stuff, the Gene timeline, which takes place, however short in those first 5 seasons, it does take place post Breaking Bad. So for me, I think it is a sequel show in terms of the order you should watch it. And, it only benefits the viewer because the show gets better and better. And another thing is, which one's better, Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad? For me, it's Better Call Saul. If you're going to say which show is better, it's that one. It's, Breaking Bad is all about, Breaking Bad is propelled forward by plot and by explosive external conflict. Better Call Saul is propelled forward by characters and explosive internal conflict. That's the way I view the differences between the two, the primary differences. And I find that kind of internalized conflict and the stuff that isn't said and the facial expressions and kind of the stuff that's been held back for seasons of television. In the case of Kim Wexler, 6 seasons and 7 years of building up to this release of her actually really showing something. I guess in the episode where she breaks up with Jimmy, she shows her emotions, but she lets it all explode in that penultimate episode of the show. which many are hailing as one of the best episodes of TV that they've seen. And I would understand that. I thought she was fantastic. Anyway, so which one's better? Better Call Saul, but I'm now deep into season 4 of Breaking Bad, and I am seeing things in Breaking Bad that I feel like yeah, that's not as good. Like just certain little immature stuff, or I don't know, like things that I feel like Better Call Saul does better in a lot of ways, from writing, to cinematography, to story, and yeah, and the writing I think really gets stronger. I don't know, but Breaking Bad is a phenomenal show, but I do think that it's the same story, and it's the same creators, the same filmmakers, a lot of the same actors, and I think it's this grand tapestry that's been woven over, how long would it be? 14 years. 15 years when you go into, when they first started Breaking Bad, the pilot, I believe, was in 2007. So a good 15-year journey, and an amazing story from start to finish. And I just love how Better Call Saul, in a way, reframed Breaking Bad. I mean, they kept saying, it's going to change the way you see Breaking Bad. It doesn't really. I mean, it kind of does, but, Breaking Bad is primarily about Walter White, Jesse Pinkman, and so on. And now that I'm watching Breaking Bad, I'm seeing that, Saul is a great character in that show, but he isn't as integral to it. And we see why he is, and I like how they reframe that. But, Breaking Bad is Walt and Jesse's story, and Better Call Saul is, Jimmy and Kim's, for all intents and purposes. Obviously, there's a lot of the characters in between in both shows. Anyway, so for me, Better Call Saul is better, but it doesn't really matter because it's like, you're comparing two things of the same ilk, even though that they are very different, as I said, in their own ways. But we'll leave that argument there. And let's see. I don't want to let go of this. I don't want to let go of the show. I don't want to let go of this series of videos. And so I contemplated coming in here and doing my review of episode 13, and then doing like my final thoughts video, like reviewing the entire show from start to finish, not like in depth, but like my thoughts on the grand story now that it's finished, then my top 5 episodes, and then which one's better. But and I just thought, Luke, things need endings, right? So that's what we're doing here. We're gonna have an ending, and I could go through this episode beat by beat and tell you all the things I loved about it. I was so satisfied with, and it's the longest episode of the whole universe, if we're going to call it that as well. I'm so glad it was kind of a chunky, kind of supersized episode for the end of the season, end of the show. And we got a lot of time for everything that it was going to show us as it unfolded. Let's just dig into it. And, in my head, I want to make this brief, but, it's me. So let's just talk about the 3 kind of cameos, really. Even though Jonathan Banks is a series regular, we had the Mike cameo set during Bagman, the episode 8 of season 5. Then we had the Walter White cameo set in season 5 of Breaking Bad. And then finally we had the Michael McKean returning as Chuck McGill cameo from pre-season 1 of Better Call Saul. So the wraparound kind of segments there, where it's sprinkled in throughout the climax of the Gene Takovic story, where Jimmy has been made by Marion and he runs out the house. And I was so like on edge watching the episode live, thinking I don't want the whole episode to be this. Like, yes, it's fun and tense, but I want to get to where we're going, where the ending is. And it really was brief. He he really didn't have a good plan of trying to get out, and was found in the garbage. And there's been lots of comparisons made about how the journey started in the garbage when he got in the dumpster for the Sandpiper papers, and it ends, with him being caught in a garbage truck here as Gene Takovic. But also at the beginning of season 6, we see the removal company who are kind of tearing down the Saul Goodman mansion, and they've got a big cardboard cutout of Saul Goodman they're throwing into the dumpster, which was a fun kind of visual kind of bookend almost, and kind of ironic foreshadowing. And so he gets caught, and at first I was like, oh my god, he's gonna like keep insisting that he's Gene Takovic, because his first call is to the Cinnabon. But he's pacing around. He's like, I can't believe you've done this. Like, of all the things that could get you caught, it was this. And then he has his mini kind of Walter White crawl space moment where he's like, screaming. No, not screaming. No, he's laughing. In crawl space, Walter White is screaming. He doesn't quite get that far, but he's, it's a mode we've never seen from Jimmy McGill. where he's just collapsed on the floor, kind of losing his mind, laughing. And then he's up to his feet again, and and requests the second phone call. How he got it, I don't know, but he gets the call into to Oakley, and I loved how that tied things round to the previous story. You know, because these Gene Takovic episodes, as much as I've loved them, they felt so far removed from Better Call Saul, because not only is it, that had an ending in Fun and Games when Kim left Jimmy, so it's like that was the end of Better Call Saul, really. And then we had 4 episodes of this extended coda epilogue, the Gene Takovic kind of coda. And that is so far removed from Better Call Saul in the way that it looks, in the black and white, in the tone, very, very downbeat and dreary. There's not much fun to be had at all. But also then, we also had Breaking Bad in between all that. So it felt like seasons ago that Nacho died, and then the Howard stuff, and Lalo. Remember when Lalo was in the show? Even Jonathan Banks, when he turns up in the episode Breaking Bad, and this one, it's like, oh, it's Jonathan Banks, even though he's been in the show the whole time. But there's such a separation, and I guess that's by design. But where was I even going with that? I don't know. But yeah, there's a distinct kind of cutting off point there. And that was my point. So when Oakley comes into it, it's like, oh, it feels like more of Better Call Saul now. It feels a bit more familiar, and I like that kind of was bringing the Gene Takovic story back into what we knew and enjoyed in the previous 6 seasons of the show. So he comes along to represent Gene Takovic, and the Marie reveal was fantastic. The way she kind of just turns her head, and you just get a glimpse of her. I've been watching a lot of reactions to the final episode, and a lot of people don't catch it, that it's Marie, until she comes into the kind of the conference room. And it's so fascinating to see that he's been caught. He's, the mustache is gone now, but he doesn't have the Saul Goodman comb over. His hair's kind of, slicked back for all intents and purposes, and he's now become something else almost, and he's an amalgam of Gene Takovic and Saul Goodman in a way. And but he really slips back into that Saul personality, and when he kind of he's berating himself in the jail cell, like, how could you do this? And then he notices the lawyer thing on the wall, and it's like, yeah, I'm a lawyer. And I would, if anyone's a big fan of the show, I would try and find it on Twitter. I think Peter Gould posted it. So he's the writer and director of this final episode. He was the co-creator of the show with Vince Gilligan. He worked on Breaking Bad from the beginning, as far as I'm aware. So very steeped in this whole world, and he wrote and directed this final episode, and he posted a page of his script from that scene when Gene kind of breaks down laughing in the jail cell, and it's fantastic. I mean, the writing is phenomenal because so much of it isn't on the screen. It's this, like, it's prose, and it's kind of playful prose. I think there's a bit where he's like, he's Saul fucking Goodman, like he's describing all the things that are going on inside this guy's head, and you don't really see that in a kind of obvious way. I mean, the performance is there, but it's fascinating to see how different people write things in that way. It reminds me of I think it's in the script for The Last Jedi when Leia gets blasted out into space, and then like Johnson is writing like her mindset, and it's like, no fucking way, she's not going to get done by the I like seeing that, because some scripts are probably a bit more routine and just like the dialogue, the stage directions. So it's fascinating to see that. But he realizes, no, I'm a fucking lawyer. I'm gonna figure this out. And he says to Oakley, like, Oakley's like, where do you see all this heading? Which is kind of a fun, kind of almost meta line where I think I mentioned that in the reaction, where it's just like, well, that's where what we're all wondering is where this is going to end up. And he's like, same where it always is, with me on top. So now he's just confident again. Now he's like, this is it. Like, I'm gonna ace this. And he manages, with all the information he knows, to work them down to 7.5 years for everything that he's done and been accomplished to, which is really crazy when you think about it. And not forgetting, of course, the scene where Marie kind of confronted him and got to really give him a piece of her mind and talk about Gomez's family and Hank and what Hank was like. And that was a really good performance from Betsy Brandt, who played Marie, obviously, throughout Breaking Bad. Kind of a what would you call it? A character that's not difficult. Well, maybe it was difficult to play, but a difficult character to portray on television, because and even with Anna Gunn, who played Skylar, in a way, Skylar was kind of stopping Walter from doing the things that we as an audience wanted to see him do, even though they were bad things. and Marie was this kind of annoyance at the beginning. And now that I'm into season 4, I'm kind of empathizing more with Marie, but she's, traditionally, for the most part, most people generally consider Marie to be a really annoying character, which is no fault of the actress, of course, and maybe the writing, but I think that she did a really good job of nailing home the seriousness of, because, Marie, I mean, she finds out that Hank has died. You don't really get much more from her in Breaking Bad. It was really great to see her kind of say her piece. We got to see Skylar say her piece to Walter at the end of Breaking Bad. It was nice to see Marie, even though it was through Saul Goodman, who wasn't really responsible, but like the way that she speaks about, she can't even say Walter White's name, Marie, she's so angry. And that was great. So I really, it was a cameo I wasn't expecting at all. It was a cameo I would have never written in my own kind of fan fiction version of the ending. But it's the cameo that I never knew that I wanted, because I think that it ties that connective tissue even further to Breaking Bad in a way that makes sense, and also kind of throws into our face, the audience, really the effects of what Walter did on people who were around, people who they loved who got hurt and stuff. And there's a bit where Jimmy's just like, it seems like he's empathizing, but then his voice is cracking, and then he does the whole routine about how Walter terrified him. And it's like, oh my God, and the fact that they can see through it, and he knows they can, and he throws it in their face. Like he's still is a piece of work, and that's a fascinating, and I've seen the episode twice now, and I just love seeing the reactions of everyone, the facial expressions, the way that he's, it's a masterclass in acting, in my opinion. There's so much great nuance going on in all those actors' faces. And overall, it was a great scene, and there's a bit of humor there with Oakley, who's kind of like, he's kind of like stuck in a really difficult spot, but it's kind of, for him, it's like, it's a big case, but it's also like, it's the hassle of working with Jimmy and kind of trying to, figure things out and stuff, and getting him to agree on a deal. But the switch comes when Jimmy's like, well, I want this ice cream every week in jail, and I've got a new piece of information for you. They got an inkling where he was going with it when he was like, well, a beloved Albuquerque, lawyer. They're like, oh, the Hamlin thing. Well, I guess you aren't in contact with your ex too much, because she went to Albuquerque a few weeks ago and confessed the whole thing, and this like rattles him. He doesn't know what to make of that. The fact that Kim has actually gone to Albuquerque, and they even tell him that she went to deliver this statement to Hamlin's widow. Like she wasn't fucking around, and it takes him back to that phone call where she's like, you should turn yourself in, and he gets mad at her, and he's like, you should turn yourself in. So she went and did it. She put her money where her mouth was, and I think that really changes everything, and that's really what the story really is. It's Jimmy and Kim. There are all these things that kind of have contributed to their relationship, have been detriments to their relationship. But from the very beginning, he's had her support through all this stuff that he's gone through with Hamlin, with Chuck, with, getting involved with Mike and Nacho and Lalo. Kim has always been there. And really, it's kind of this the love story. But Breaking Bad, I think, is a story about hate in a way, and Better Call Saul is a story about love. Ultimately, it's the love that he feels like he, doesn't get reciprocated from his brother. It's the love that he has for this woman who just stands by him through so many things that other people would be running for a mile if they became involved with or even heard of. But Kim, they're kindred spirits. And it's a great love story, I think. And by the end of the episode and the show, it really does frame the whole thing as about those two characters and stuff. But I love that that's the turning point for him, when he realizes that, okay, she's decided to do the right thing. But that's still not enough for him, and he's on the plane, and he's there with the guard and everything, and he calls over Oakley, and he's like, asking questions. He's like trying to figure out what's going on. He's like, what's going on with the Kim thing? And Oakley's like, well, there's no evidence, but Hamlin's widow is going to take her for everything that she's got. She's already shopping out for lawyers and stuff. And he's thinking about this, and he says, I got some new information about Kim Wexler. They're going to want to hear this. So he's been taken to be put on trial in Albuquerque, and he's got something up his sleeve. Now, I really thought, holy shit, he's going to try and bring Kim down with him. Like, you know, if I'm going down, I'm bringing her down with me. We'll be together in this kind of hell for the rest of our lives. Obviously, I don't think that Kim would really, you know, even be sentenced that harshly for, you know, what she was witness to. Even the things that they did, perhaps, you know, there's probably a few laws that have been broken that she could be, you know, maybe sentenced to, but, you know, there's two very different things going on there. But, you know, as I was watching it unfold live and not knowing where it was going, I was thinking, is he going to try and take her down with him? So that was my kind of stress about it. And I realize now I've kind of left the 3 cameos to one side, so we'll put a button on those and we'll just work our way through the main kind of black and white you know, end game storyline of this episode, and then we get the courtroom scene. You know, I remember on the Reddit, the Better Call Saul Reddit, people talking about, you know, how much time the episode's going to get if it's longer than usual, and people saying, well, yeah, I mean, you know, it could be a long episode, but let's not forget that chicanery, the ending of the chicanery episode with Chuck going off in this rant is like, you know, it's 5 minutes long, and it's one of the best things ever. And someone's like, yeah, I mean, you know, 10 minutes, an extra 10 minutes in the final episode, we could get a whole ass 2 chicaneries. And then people like, a chicanery should be like a measurement of time. You know? So we could get 2 chicaneries worth of this. Anyway, that just cracked me up. But it doesn't quite reach the level of that kind of moment with Chuck, but it's pretty close. Well, maybe it is actually better when I think about it. It's an incredibly moving scene to me. When I teared up when I watched it for the first time. And I love the way that he walks into that courtroom. You know, he's got the swagger, the song is playing. He's in this kind of sharp suit. He's got the hair slicked back. He's a different version of himself. And the judge is like, he's been requested to be called Saul Goodman. And I'm like, oh my God, there's really no redemption for this guy. He's just going to keep burying himself deeper until he's dead. You know, and it's just burned everyone around him. Like, he's not going to, like, what I wanted for Jimmy was just a release of responsibility of the things that he'd done, you know, within himself, publicly, whatever, just something where he reckoned with what he'd done and who he had been, and I wanted him to become someone else. And I don't know if I've said this in a video, I may have, I might not have, but my wish was that at the end of the whole show, he would go back to not just being called Jimmy McGill, but to be James M. McGill. Not that he'd go around saying, hi, I'm James M. McGill, but, you know, James, you know, the Jimmy was, he's a man who's gone through many masks. Jimmy McGill, you know, that's him. He's Jimmy, but, you know, Jimmy's a nickname, and, you know, Slippin' Jimmy, you know, and the connotations of that. Saul Goodman, he created, you know, first to scam people, but then, you know, as a way to completely distance and distract himself from this trauma that he'd gone through with Kim leaving him. And then Gene Takovic is another mask that he put over all of his kind of pain and hurt and suffering. And, you know, this guy who is so naturally exuberant and kind of, you know, extroverted, you know, and talkative, is forced to be this introverted, you know, mute almost, this kind of lowly Cinnabon manager. And, you know, you can see that eating away at him throughout the whole show when we kept going to that Cinnabon timeline. And so he's been through many phases, and I felt like there should be a final form where he's just an honest guy. He has everything from all those personalities that are a part of him, and will always be a part of him. He's always going to have that pull to kind of to pull something, and he's going to have that silver tongue, as he always does, but to just be more honest and kind of start over. And even if he does go to jail, just to know within himself that he's done the right thing for once, or at least, you know, for the first time in a very long time. That's what I wanted, and that's what we got. And I was really happy to hear that Bob Odenkirk had said in the podcast that that's what he wanted. He really wanted the distinction of James McGill to come up. He wanted it to be this kind of combination of everything, but like a moving forward with his best, you know, his best foot forward, basically, to kind of turn over a new leaf. And that's what we got. And the way that they got there was very powerful. You know, he comes in and he's putting on a show with the suit. And, you know, I'll be called Saul Goodman in this case, you know. I think she even said the United States of America versus Saul Goodman. Sounded very dramatic, but he gets up and he's like, I want to, you know, and I love how, you know, they keep stopping him. And he said, no, seriously, I will save you time. We'll get out of it much quicker if you just give me a chance to say my piece. And Kim's there because she's been called there. And it was nice to see Kim kind of dipping her toes into volunteering at a kind of a law, not a law firm, but like a law office. You know, it's a free kind of what would you call it? Law services, I guess. You know, and so she volunteers there, and she's dipping her toes back in. She cleansed herself from telling the truth in Albuquerque, and now she's trying to move on with her life a little bit, you know, baby steps. And then she gets the call, like, have you seen the news? You know, so she comes to Albuquerque, and he turns around, and he's like, okay, so there's nothing. I lied to the government. There's nothing with Kim Wax. So I just want her to be there, be here to see this. Kind of a mirroring of how he kind of brought Chuck's ex-wife to the trial, just to kind of for her to witness what was going to go down. And he goes into his spiel about, you know, Walter White, you know, terrified me and pointed a gun at my head. And you're like, oh, what are you doing? Marie's there, you know, fighting the urge to roll her eyes again. And then he says, you know, I was terrified of Walter White, but not for long. And I just almost get goosebumps thinking about it. And he just goes into this whole thing of like, I knew what I was doing. I was going to take advantage of that situation for everything that it was worth. I made millions, you know. I wasn't there when people were killed, but I sure as hell knew that it was happening, you know. And it's just this amazing, like, you know, he just throws it all out, and the people are freaking out. Like, obviously, Oakley's like, hang on a minute, you know? And the other side just, no, let's continue this. You know, they're loving this. You know, they want him to kind of, are you sure? Okay, we're going to swear you in under oath that you're going to change your statement, and this is going to affect you. He's like, absolutely. And he just confesses to everything, and in a way that just like he fully accepts responsibility for everything that he did. He doesn't reframe it that he was coerced. It's like, nope, I did it for the money, you know, and you know, without me, Walter White would not have been what he was. Like in a way, it feels like he's taking credit, but he's right in a way. And they showed you in the previous episodes how it was really Jimmy's kind of seeking out of Walter again that kind of got the ball rolling with Walter getting hooked up with Gus, and that just, you know, it all extrapolated from there. So what he's saying is true. And then he turns to Kim, and it's almost this like he's seeking approval. Like, you know, is that good? You know, like, you know, does that make you feel differently about me that I've done the right thing? And she gives him nothing. She's just sitting there looking at him, and he kind of, and again, it's all in the facial expressions, and he's kind of like, oh shit, and hang on a minute, and then he just one more thing, you know, and you know, I guess when a guy's been spilling his guts on one of the biggest drug crime cases that city has probably ever seen in that, you know, fictionalized version of the world, okay, well, let's see what else he's got. And he really just says something that's really not germane to the story at all, and the case. But he talks about how with Chuck, you know, his relationship with his brother, how kind of doomed that was, and how he played a part in having Chuck's his law license, malpractice license, or his malpractice insurance, I think it was. But Jimmy played a part in having that removed, so that Chuck would no longer be able to do what he lives for. And he says, you know, I tried to hurt my brother that way, and he ended up killing himself. And I'll live with that. You know, and again, I think a lesser writer would say that, you know, I was responsible for my brother's death, and I feel ashamed of myself. But no, he just says that, you know, I did a horrible thing to my brother, you know, blame on both sides. But, you know, he killed himself because of the things that I did, probably led to it. I'll live with that. That's all. I'll live with that. There's so much weight to that sentence. Those 3 words. I'll live with that. And then he goes and he sits down. He looks at Kim again, and her kind of expression has changed, and it seems like she's kind of a bit more proud of him, perhaps, and a bit more like, you know, well, shit, like it's a long time coming that you kind of, you know, took on some responsibility and kind of ownership of, you know, your part to play. And the whole Chuck thing is really murky because Chuck was a prick too, you know. But, you know, Jimmy certainly didn't help matters. Anyway, so the kicker for me is when he goes and he sits back down, and Oakley's like, what was that stuff with your brother? That wasn't even a crime. And he looks at Oakley, almost offended. He's like, yes, it was. Yes, it was, you know. Whoa. And that is a right in the chest moment. Like, yes, it was. What I did was a crime. You know, not a crime in the eyes of the law, but it was just a crime, you know, to my brother. You know, and that's the heartbreaking thing with Jimmy and Chuck, is that Jimmy always loved Chuck more than Chuck loved Jimmy, you know. And Yeah, that was really powerful. And then just the button on the whole thing was when they're like, Saul Goodman, and he's like, no, it's McGill, James McGill. And that's what made me tear up when he's like, no, I'm James. Like, and you know, in a way, he's putting on a show when he comes in. He's like, I'm Saul Goodman. Address me as Saul Goodman in this case. But he's really just shedding that persona and killing it. You know, people say, oh, there wasn't enough deaths in the end. It was a death. There was the death of Jimmy and Kim's relationship, and the death of Saul Goodman in this final episode. Saul gone. You know, and that persona will always be with him in some way. But you know, living it was killed in that moment when he you know, exercised it from himself. You know, it's James McGill, and what an incredible scene. And that kind of leads us into the end of the episode, the end of the show, the end of the story. But we have the 3 cameos. So the Mike one at the beginning, during that great episode, Bagman is like, oh, cool, we get to see something from this. And Jimmy bringing up the idea of the time machine. What would you do if you had a time machine? You know, and I also love the callback to season 1. You know, when Mike and Jimmy were kind of, you know, dancing around the Kettleman case, and he had Mike go and steal all their money, and at the end of season 1, he's like, we had like all that money in our hands, like, you know, we would never have been caught. Why didn't we do anything with it? Mike's like, well, you said something about doing the right thing, and you know, but that was the job, you know, to get the money. That's all it was. That's, you know, that's as far as it goes, you know. And then they call back to that when he's like, you know, we're sitting on $7 million of cash, literally. You know, we could go anywhere, we could do anything. Let's build a time machine. Where would you go? And I like that Mike kind of plays along with it. He plays ball with Jimmy, and the first thing he says is, you know, what would he go back and change? And he's like, I think it was 8th of December 2001. Then he changes his mind, and that kind of, I guess, gives us a little bit of, oh, well, what did he mean? And I wonder if that meant maybe the day that he had a conversation with his son about accepting the bribe money, but he goes back to 1984. Is it the day I accepted my first bribe? Then I go ahead and check in on a few people I'd like to see how they're doing. Very sweet. And then Jimmy just ruins the moment saying, like, you know, how he kind of Biff Tannen his way into being a billionaire. And he's like, is there such thing as a trillionaire? He said, that's all it is for you is money. He said, what else? You know? And it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then the Walter scene, which, you know, I think is the least impactful of the 3, perhaps. A lot of people have been coming out of that Walter cameo and saying, wow, he really was just always a dick, wasn't he? Like, so condescending to everyone, and, you know, Jimmy, and they're kind of holed up in the basement and waiting to be kind of given new identities and stuff at the end of Breaking Bad. And Walt's fiddling around with something, and Jimmy's like, well, you know, time machine. And Walt's like, Walt's basically like, you stupid idiot. You know, he gives him the Gordon Ramsay treatment. He's like, what are you, an idiot sandwich? Like, he's just like, time travel does not exist. It's a scientific impossibility. And then, you know, Saul's like, well, anything you would change? Like, regret. You're talking about regret. Like, he's such a dick, you know. But obviously, he's at the end of his tether at that point, to boot. But, you know, Walt goes into the grey matter thing, which I loved hearing about because I love the whole grey matter storyline that's never really expanded on too much in Breaking Bad. I wish there'd been more of that. So it's really cool for me, just as a fan of that backstory that seemed so interesting that they only scratched the surface of, I think. It was really cool to hear that, but it was also like, you know, really, of all the things you've just been through over the past couple of years, it's the grey matter that's kind of the big regret. And then with Jimmy, he's like, well, I did a slip and fall in Chicago, and Walter's like, a slip and fall? Yeah, put me through bartender college. And the button is Walt just saying, so, you've always been like this. And it's just, that's like close to the bone, you know. It was cool to see Walter White one more time, and then we had the Chuck cameo, which I popped huge. You see in my reaction video, I was so excited to see Chuck. I had, you know, and really it took a second viewing to really focus on that scene because I was so excited. And it seems weird, and watching it back, it seems weird to me that I was so excited about that. But I love the character of Chuck. I don't like him in terms of, like, I think he's a great guy, but I just love the performance and the conflict with him and Jimmy and kind of the heartbreaking relationship that they had. And I just felt like it wouldn't be complete without one more appearance from Chuck. And in the final episode, it couldn't have been more perfect. And it was the last cameo too. And he has the time machine book. So the question isn't asked, but you can theorize maybe this moment with Chuck is what Jimmy's time machine moment would be, where he's bringing in Chuck. He's around the time his electromagnetic sensitivity or whatever it is kind of crippling him in terms of his life. and Jimmy's there buying his groceries and getting the ice and stuff. And I like the line where Chuck is like, I hope you didn't steal that ice from a motel, ice box or whatever. And Jimmy's like, yeah, keep hoping. And he's like, well, you don't have to do this every day. And Jimmy's like, yeah, I do, because you're my brother. You do the same for me. And we just cut to Chuck, and there's that look in his face like, would I though? And it's a sad thing, but and it isn't a complete disregard for Jimmy. It's just he knows he probably wouldn't do that for Jimmy, and then he kind of he says, do you want to stay and have a chat, talk about your clients? And Jimmy's like, I don't know about that stuff, And Chuck's like, it's always the same with us, isn't it? And he's kind of acknowledging like we can never really work past the problem in our relationship here. We talk, we help each other out with things here and there, but we never really connect further than that. And, it's almost Chuck acknowledging that there's a sadness to that in a way. And Jimmy's like, yeah, it's all cool. There's no worries, And it was, and then, the line where Chuck says, that, you can change your path if you want to. You don't always have to stick to the same thing that you're doing. And Jimmy's like, well, like you ever did that? And at first I thought it was a throwaway line, but you think about it, it's kind of setting up what the ending is. He was persistently for 6 years just on this path of destruction, and then ultimately just running at all costs, and kind of just and not only physically running from the police, and running from his own responsibility himself, running from his own part that he played in deaths, and with Howard and with Chuck and all the people at Walter White, kind of that whole thing. So, you can always just change your path. And that's what he does because of Kim, and maybe Chuck gave him the idea when he remembered that moment. But I thought that was a wonderful scene to kind of to throw in at the end. And then we have two final sequences. We have the prison bus with all the inmates chanting "Better Call Saul," and the way that scene builds up is just beautiful. It's like an opera. It's just the way that it's very like first Jimmy's just looking at a bead of sweat on the back of this bald guy's head. And then eventually they're all just banging on the bus, "Better Call Saul." And I just thought it was great. And he's like, no, it's McGill. It's McGill. No, it's Better. And I like that they call him Better Call Saul. Very random aside, there's a video online of Dean Norris, who plays Hank in Breaking Bad. He's on some like gaming YouTuber's channel who has millions of subscribers or whatever, and he does Minecraft videos. And I guess Dean Norris's kids like this YouTuber, so Dean Norris plays Minecraft with this YouTuber, and he just calls him Hank Breaking Bad. He says, okay, so you just take this tool here, Hank Breaking Bad, and you do this. And that's what it reminded me of. Hey, it's Better Call Saul. Like, they just call him Better Call Saul. But the way that at first I thought that it was showing that like there's an intimidation factor, and he's going to have a tough time in prison. But then I realized that there's a respect. He's a criminal lawyer. He's not a criminal. He's a criminal lawyer, and I think there was some respect there. And the way he said, "No, it's McGill," and they're banging on the bus, "Better Call Saul," and then he's just kind of like, well, I can't stop him. It's like I'm not pushing this, but it is what it is. And then we see him in prison, and he's doing the same job as he used to in the Cinnabon. He's baking things, and he gets a call. There's a lawyer to see you, and so I'll take care of it, Saul, like a fist bump, and he's like pointing the finger at someone. That's why I felt he would work in prison. He kind of fit right in, and it is a beautiful kind of full circle moment for a guy who was a lawyer for so long that he would end up in jail at the end of the story. And of course, he comes into the meeting room, and it's Kim. And it's like, and one detail I liked was that her hair was like loose and brown in these final episodes, but now it was a bit more styled, and she's a bit more like the Kim we used to know. Not fully, but she's beginning to build herself back into something resembling a normal human being, and not the shell that she had become in Florida. And you can kind of theorize what she was doing and what she would go on to do, but it's about this moment where they see each other again, and there's so much emotion, and kind of not like obvious emotion, but so much weight behind "Hi Jimmy," and there's very little word shared between them. They get a cigarette and backs against the wall. I think I talked about this in my prediction video. Well, not my prediction, what I would like to see in the ending. And for me, it was him doing his time, coming out as an old man, and she's there outside the prison, leaning against the wall for the cigarette. But it was, they kept it in the current timeline. I think that was a much better way to go. And to see, obviously there's the visual mirroring of the first episode, and in the car park underneath the HHM building where they're smoking the cigarette and the light's going one direction in episode 1, it's going in the other direction in episode 63. Beautiful kind of echoing and bookending of a visual idea for these two characters from the beginning and the end of the show, and the symbolism of the when she lights the cigarette and the flame is the only thing that's in color. And that's, there's two very obvious ways you can go with that. One is that the flame is still there between them. That spark is still there to be ignited. The other is that when they're around each other, there's fire and it's dangerous, So it's you can kind of pick and choose which we want that to represent, I think. But there's so much chemistry there when she's lighting the cigarette and he kind of just holds her hand. Like it's like sexier than like any kiss I've seen in a movie in the past 10, you know what I mean? There's just something so believable about these two characters' chemistry for each other, and the kind of the passion they have for each other. Very little said, and then she just kind of says, 7.5 years, like you had him down, and he's like, yeah, well, 86 years, maybe good behavior, and she has a little chuckle, and they stood there smoking the cigarette, and that's it. And that would have been a great ending, but no, we get her leaving, and we now see her kind of really struggling with her emotions. She's been holding it in because, she doesn't want to go in there and break down and kind of leave him with that. She's trying to appear strong, as I'm sure he is too, knowing that they can really never be together again. He's there for life, and she leaves, and out in the basketball court, there's Jimmy. He stood there, and he gives her the whole, and it's that kind of, you can read so much into that. Apparently they did film a version where Kim shot the guns back, but they decided it was not appropriate, and I totally agree with that. Then we get the shot of them separated by this gulf and the two fences between them, and she just looks at him and she walks away, but she turns back to look at him again, and he just fades out of view as the wall kind of, curves around, and that's how we end. Oh, and the music, Dave Porter, who's done the music for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, the music in this episode in particular is phenomenal, like really top tier stuff. And I think that music at the final scene was used when they share the cigarette in the first episode. If not, it's kind of an adaptation of that. And I did tweet the guy personally just to say I thought your music was great, particularly in the final episode, and he liked it, which was nice. But regardless, I just thought that the music was really impactful at the end. People were saying, well, what's going to be the song that they use, like Baby Blue, and I thought Winner Takes It All would have been really appropriate, even though they've already used it, and even though ABBA apparently are really difficult to work with when it comes to kind of using their songs. But the winner takes it all, the loser's standing small. Like, there's so much of it as appropriate to this story, but it was much more appropriate for it to end on a much quieter note, with little explosions, physically, many inwardly and internally and emotionally, but at the end it was a quiet, somber, kind of bittersweet finale. And it was, in a way, it was the ending of all the movies that Jimmy and Kim used to love watching together. Those old black and white noir movies, and literally in black and white, and just there's these two kind of doomed lovers, and a kind of a tragic ending, but there's still light at the end of the tunnel. And it's really interesting to speak to people and see what they think about like what happens after that. Some of my friends have said like they interpret the fact that the way that the scene is shot at the end and the way that it's portrayed is that that's the last time they see each other. She's never going to go back, and it was kind of, that was her goodbye to him, and that she used the excuse that her New Mexico bar card doesn't have an expiration date, so she essentially snuck into the prison in a way, and pulled a little bit of a scam there just to see him, but that she wouldn't necessarily be able to do that again, or maybe she is practicing law again, like who knows. But for me, I don't view it that way, and that's probably because I am a hopeless romantic in a sense. But for me, I just think that how would they not talk again? Like, I think she moves on with her life, maybe even has another relationship, but I feel like they're always going to be connected, and that just that instant chemistry they had together in that final scene in the prison cell. Well, it's not prison cell, is it? It's I guess it's just a meeting room, but in the inside the prison, it shows that spark is there, and there is danger there between them. They know that, but I don't see how she wouldn't call him from time to time, maybe visit, every year or every couple of years. And literally, I read an interview when I was thinking that Bob Odenkirk said that he thinks they'll see each other again and that she'd visit every year or two, just to kind of catch up. And I think that's probably how it would go down, that they would never have a relationship again in the way that they used to, or really, as a couple ever again. And that's really sad. But for me, her leaving and looking at him as she's walking away, and that's the end of the show. That's the end of their romance. I think that's that they had their time, and they were able, after a horrific separation in a way, the way that she left, and on the terms that she did, and what he became after that, and the lives that they led following it, to reconcile that and to basically become themselves again, but after kind of, scourging themselves, like just cleansing and getting rid of all that kind of that dirtiness that they had kind of let themselves be covered in for so many years. They both did the right thing, and you can argue whether Kim's paying for it or not. I mean, emotionally probably she is, but Jimmy is definitely paying for it emotionally and physically, and where he's incarcerated. But yeah, it feels like they both did the right thing, and when they see each other in that moment, it's like, for me, I felt like that was the end of the way that they were. And for me, I think in my head, the way that the story continues is that they would always be a part of each other's lives, and that's never going to go away. And now they can just be friends again, and they can talk again, and see each other from time to time, and as Jimmy grows old, as she grows old, they'll continue to see each other, and I don't see why not, But that's the more idealistic side of me, the romanticist in me. But I think but then again, I say romanticist, but in my eyes, I don't think they would romantically be linked together again. I think it's just there's a lot of love there for each other, and sometimes love goes beyond, romance and kissing and all that kind of stuff. And I love that they didn't kiss, and it was more of a tension there. I like that. It was really, really, really great stuff. So I think I've covered everything. And again, I could talk more. I felt like I rushed through this, but it is what it is. Man, what a show! There's probably so many more things I could talk about. I love the way they ended it. I felt it was so appropriate, and it was just the perfect story. It's the best show I've ever seen. I felt like that for a long time now, but this just completely confirms that they stuck the landing. Most people, I really thought that the ending would really bother a lot of people. I thought it was going to be some backlash, but it's been almost unanimous. People loved it, critically acclaimed. I hope they win some awards. Doesn't really matter if they do, but it'd be nice just for them to get their moment in the sun and stuff. But what an incredible show! What an incredible run of 15 years of amazing storytelling across both shows and the movie. If they made a follow-up, I wouldn't be mad. I think maybe a movie would be probably the best thing. Because I think when you do a show, and it's like a third spin-off, and now there's expectation for it to go 5 or 6 seasons, kind of match the kind of same, volume as what came before. But I think a limited series maybe, or a movie, but honestly, heart of hearts, I hope we never see them again, which is horrible to think about because I love those characters so much. But that's why it's the best decision, because we had a lot of time with them. We had 7 years, 6 seasons, 63 episodes, a lot of time. And things need endings, I think. So I would like to see it end there. And that's pretty much all I got to say, I think. So I can't say thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, because there is no next one. Again, I could go into favorite episodes or whatever. I was trying to compile the top 5 list. It was something like Nippy and 5-0, Bagman, Winner, and Chicanery is probably my favorite episode. Nippy is my favorite episode of season 6, just because I just love the self-contained nature of it, and just the relief to have fun with it after fun and games, no link intended. But I think that the best episode of season. I don't even know what the best maybe Plan and Execution is the best episode of season 6, but I would say like the run from Plan and Execution, Point and Shoot, Fun and Games, Nippy, Breaking Bad, Waterworks, and Soul Gone is the best 7 episode run of any TV show that I've ever seen. I mean, I see that's just like pointless stuff to say, really, because I've already said I think it's the best show I've seen, so it's a moot point, really. But you know what I mean. Like, I think that run of 7 episodes is just unbelievable. Nippy is by far the best episode of season 6, but it's probably my favorite. You know, it's the one I could see myself watching independently of the rest of the show every now and then. But yeah, I have lots of favorite episodes, but there isn't really an episode I don't like. You know, there's some that aren't as impactful as others, I suppose, but you know. Anyway, I can tell that I'm trying to drag this out further because it's a sadness to reach this end, but like I said, things need endings. So thank you for watching. If you've gone along on this journey with me, I have pipe dreams in the future, 10-15 years down the line, to maybe do an episode by episode review and really dig. There's so many things I've missed, you know, because those first 5.5 seasons I kind of just did an overview for an hour. So much more I could have gone into if I'd done it episode by episode. But it is what it is, and this is I love that I did this series. I enjoyed talking about the show, even if it was pretty much just effusive praise, if that's even the right word. It was just like me just gushing about how great it was, which might come across as very insincere, but the quality is just there. It really is. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I won't see you next time because it's the end of the series. But at the end of the podcast, the Better Call Saul Insider podcast, they get their guests to kind of give them a kind of a line reading of Better Call Saul to end the podcast on. So I'll give you a Better Call Saul to end this whole series on, and we will end it there. So thank you very much for watching Better Call Saul.